Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2015 Calabasas City Council Candidate Forum, a joint presentation of the City of Calabasas and the League of Women Voters. I am Fran Lapides from the League of Women Voters, and I will be your moderator this evening. We are honored tonight to be able to have Cub Scout Pack 333 of Calabasas to present colors and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, ladies and You're good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Color Guard, advance. All those in uniform, please salute the flag. Everyone else, please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard, salute the colors. 2. Color Guard dismissed. Please be seated.
Thank you so much. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government. It helps shape public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. We are here this evening to help increase election awareness and participation among Calabasas voters and hopefully increase voter turnout on November 3rd. This evening we will be talking with 3 candidates who are running for 2 open city council seats and who will take this opportunity to explain why they deserve your vote on November 3rd. The candidates will discuss a number of issues important to Calabasas residents, ranging from environment to the economy. Before discussing the format and ground rules, I'd like to welcome the 3 city council candidates joining us. They are seated to my left. To my immediate left is Fred Gaines. Next to him is Steve Roseman. And at my far left is Alicia Weintraub. I would like to thank everyone here who has joined us at Founders Hall, as well as those watching on CTV or online. In a few moments, each candidate will be given 1 minute to introduce themselves and their platform. I will then present the panel with the first question. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to that question, and then the first 2 responders will have 30 seconds each for a rebuttal. We are very pleased to have received so many questions submitted by residents of Calabasas, and the candidates will be asked a cross-section of those questions tonight. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give a closing statement. Audience, we would like to request that you keep all your applause quiet during the forum, and that includes any vocal appreciation of the candidates and save it all for the end. That gives us more time to get in all the questions and to hear what the candidates have to say. When your time is running up, you will, when you have 15 seconds left, you will have a sign held up, as you can see in front of you, giving you the 15-second warning. And then when your minute is up, or your 30 seconds, you will get the stop sign. And we will move on to the next candidate when that stop sign comes up. So we're going to begin with your opening statements. And Fred Gaines is going to go first. Fred?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and the city, everyone for coming out. This is a great day for Calabasas. You know, those of us who have worked in the city for many years, to be here in Founders Hall. This was the purpose of building this building and having this room, is to bring our community together for these kind of events. And it's a great day for the city too, because we have 3 excellent candidates. Unlike some elections that are going on around the country, any of the choices here will do a great job in going forward with the vision of the city and serving the needs of the residents of the city. Let me tell you, we're going to talk a lot about specific issues, so let me tell you quickly. When I look at an issue on the city council, does it keep the city safe? Does it keep the city beautiful and support our environmental goals? Are we programming to the things that we want to see in this city, and are we fiscally responsible? Thank you.
Steve.
Right, my name is Steve Roseman, running for Calabasas City Council. I'm a father of 3 children in the LWVLA. I'm an HOA leader, and I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. I will make an immediate impact on Calabasas City Council. My campaign themes of common sense leadership and balanced decision-making is resonating with the community. My endorsements include Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, State Senator Fran Pavley, Mayor Lucy Martin, and Councilmember Mary Sue Mauer. My agenda isn't complex and shouldn't be construed as controversial. I will protect the Santa Monica Mountains, beginning with my support of Measure O and advancing policies that will preserve the environment. I will scrutinize the onslaught of excessive hotels and other developments to ensure consistency with the general plan. I'll continue to support our excellent schools, supporting Measure E and making sure the city continues to fund Calabasas public schools. And I'll prepare the community to better support the seniors who want to age in place by expanding senior-friendly accessibility to city infrastructure. Thank you.
Alicia?
Good evening. My name is Alicia Weintraub, and I am one of your candidates for the Calabasas City Council. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the City of Calabasas for putting on this forum tonight. My husband Adam and I are so fortunate to be raising our 2 children in Calabasas. I am running for the City Council because I believe my education, work, and civic experience and my work as both an environmental and planning commissioner give me the experience and tools necessary to deal with the important issues facing Calabasas, which include our budget, land use, public safety, community involvement, and support for seniors. I will spearhead fiscal accountability to ensure the sustainability of city programs, including the upcoming senior center, protect our general plan, and utilize even better planning and technology to protect our special way of life well into the future. I will continue to champion policies that support our open space, our public schools, seniors, and a safer Calabasas for everybody.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the questions. The first question we'll pose, Fred, you'll get to go first, and then we'll move down, take turns going first, so that you will get a rebuttal and Steve will get a rebuttal on the first question. The first question is, the city of Calabasas has recently faced some significant challenges with respect to its financial situation. What is your experience in dealing with fiscal matters and budgets? Fred?
Well, we're coming out of the recession where we had about a 15 to 20% hit in our revenue. And what we did on the city council during those years is, between a combination of budget cuts, a hiring freeze, and use of reserves, we were able to maintain services. You didn't notice 20% less of city services because we were able, thank goodness to our those who came before us, that we had necessary reserves. So I think that I've been through this trial and successfully shown how we can control costs when our revenues are either locked in or reduced, which is a situation that we may find ourselves in for many years to come.
Steve.
Looking at the city's budget for the future, I think the city is in a very interesting position, and it does have revenue coming in that can address a number of issues. I think the budget is a well-balanced budget, but I do think there's a number of issues that are missing from the budget that haven't been addressed. For example, looking at the budget, there's been no determination of any revenue streams coming in for certain programs like the senior community and other issues. So although we have a very solid, balanced budget, I think addressing those fiscal issues, looking at expenses, as if I have the pleasure of serving on City Council, we'll address expense side of it, as well as income and revenue coming in. But it's important to make sure that we address within the budget all aspects, from the revenue side of it as well as the expense side. Fortunately, we have a big general fund, and within the general fund, we are able to allocate expenses and be able to allocate funds. There was a loss of Spirant of just under $600,000, which the city is moving forward with an annexation, but we shouldn't be counting on that revenue.
Thank you. Alicia.
Our city's budget is probably one of the most important issues impacting our community. Right now, we are at a loss of $165,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. I have extensive experience working with municipal budgets. When I actually worked for the city of Culver City, I was responsible for a whole department budget and had to work on balancing the budget when we had to look at whether or not we were able to hire staff, if there had to be a freeze in terms of staff. So I have extensive experience in terms of municipal budget. I'm also the chair of the LWVLA Measure G Oversight Committee, where we are responsible for oversight of a specific budget. I'm very involved with our schools, and just like city budgets, the school budgets have been cut too. So through the foundation, we've been able to raise over $1 million for the schools. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do as a city to work on improving our city's finances. One of the things that we can look at is the annexation. We need to make sure, and we'll go into that later.
Okay, we now have rebuttal. So Fred and Steve both get to have 30 seconds to comment on any further comments they might want to make of what's been said.
So what we've been able to do during the downturn is we've been able to, for example, by the hiring freeze, we're down 10 employees in the city, 10 full-time employees, but we're able to run the city with 10 less full-time employees. It does involve using some more contracted services, but we've been able to make those kinds of adjustments which allow us to have income in place, for example, when seniors come to us, when these programs take off, to be able to fund those programs and to be able to use reserves to build the senior center that's being built right behind us. So I think I've shown that we've had successful leadership on these budget issues in the city.
Steve, 30 seconds.
Sure. As far as the budget is concerned, the CFO has done an excellent job when it came to paying for the construction of the senior center. Funds were not tapped into as far as the construction cost, that the city was refinanced, money was taken out, and that's the way it was funded. But I do think when I serve on City Council, it is very important to make sure that you address the expenses and the income generated by the senior center, which probably should have been done before construction broke ground, but will definitely be taken care of as soon as possible.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we're going to stick with money matters for a couple minutes. And so the next question also deals with the budget. And this one asks, and this one's going to go to Steve first. He will be the first speaker on this one, and then Alicia, and then back to Fred. Steve, how would you allocate funds to improve the local economy so that the city can continue to deliver the services the community has come to know and expect?
The importance of allocation of funds is really derived by generating a climate to encourage business within the city. We have a lot of businesses within the city that move to the city to generate income because of the value that Calabasas brings. We have a very good school system. We have a significant increase in the cost of homes in Calabasas, and local businesses are there to be promoted. I think it's very important to make sure we encourage business. It's not the role of city to necessarily grow business, but at the same time, we should create a climate that's beneficial to businesses, assisting businesses in various events. There's often examples of where the city gets involved, whether it's the Pumpkin Festival or some type of taste of Calabasas that should be introduced. And the city contributes a certain amount of funds to the Chamber of Commerce. But at the end of the day, the important thing is to create a climate in Calabasas to encourage businesses, the right businesses for Calabasas, what residents want.
Thank you. Alicia.
I think our community, our city needs to allocate our local funds based on our city's priorities: public safety, open space, education, senior services, and all of the general priorities within our community. And that also includes supporting our businesses in terms of the resources that we provide to them. I think one of the things that will ultimately help our local economy is the support that we provide to our local businesses. We need to make sure that our current shopping centers remain full with the right type of businesses. We need to support the auto row, which has the zoning for that designation and which provides significant revenue in a low impact way to our community. But we need to allocate our local funds based on the priorities of our community, public safety, and those costs continue to rise. I think what we also need to do is we also have to focus on emergency preparedness, and significant funds need to be spent preparing for that and making sure that our city is ready. Thank you.
Fred.
We were very fortunate for the first 20 plus years of the city not to really have to worry about this too much. The city of LA helps us out by having a gross receipts business tax. So you get to the first exit outside of, on the freeway outside of LA, and you have car dealerships and businesses that generate gross receipts that would be taxed if they were one exit over. At the same time, we're now sort of locked in. We're down to the last handful of parcels in the city where there's going to be any kind of commercial development. During the recession, there were proposals to put apartment buildings and truck yards and other types of things on that, which we guided those property owners to other types of uses. And we do need to make sure that that future uses are uses that that both serve our community, but also have the potential to generate some additional income, or else we're locked in with our current set of revenues in the city, and that doesn't allow us to expand any of our programs.
Okay, now we have rebuttals. So Steve, you have 30 seconds.
Sure. Within the structure of the budget for the 2014 and 15 budget, the revenue streams generated were by way of sales tax was roughly $6.8 million for the city. Utility tax was about $3.5 million. Property tax is about $3.1 million, with a growth annually as property tax increases at 2% max pursuant to Proposition 13. So we do have streams coming in. The auto dealerships bring in about $2 million, and the transient property tax of about $1.5, $1.6 million.
Thank you. Alicia?
Our local businesses need to feel that they can be supported and grow in our community, and that will significantly help our local economy. We don't need to go outside of the community, and we need to build within. And I think it's very important that the businesses within our community feel supported, and there's ways that we can promote our local businesses. We can recognize them for environmental excellence. We can encourage local businesses to bid on city projects, and there's more that we can do in terms of retention of the businesses in our community. And one thing I think that we should ultimately do.
Thank you. Okay, Alicia, this is your question to go first, and this is moving a little bit away from budget items to one of the other responsibilities of the City Council, which is to vote on requests by communities to either join or leave the City of Calabasas. Do you support neighborhoods seceding from Calabasas? Why or why not?
I do not support communities seceding from Calabasas. Calabasas was formed as a community in 1991, and an overwhelming majority of the community voted to incorporate. I think throughout time, every neighborhood has their own issues and their own concerns, and it's the obligation and responsibility of the City Council to work with those individual neighborhoods. But if we let every neighborhood who had their own individual concerns leave our community, we wouldn't be left with a community. And I think it's important that we take advantage of the differences within the neighborhoods that are all unique, but I would not support allowing individual communities to annex from our city.
Fred?
Well, there's a legal process to go through. If people want to secede from the city, they can go get signatures and demand that the matter be put on the ballot. If they meet the qualifications, it'll go to a vote. I've seen nothing of that kind of support or movement for any kind of secession from the city, and I don't expect that we will. Overwhelmingly, the people of the city are happy to be in the city. And they are happy about it because of the great programs and the beauty and the public safety that we've put in place. People who remember back to the days of being in LA County and not having the ability to have their local government near them are virtually unanimous in that the city has done a great job and has brought government to the people locally, and so I think it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a non-issue. What's a bigger issue is when people do have concerns, they need to know that the city council is going to listen and treat them fairly, and I think we've done that.
Thank you. Steve?
I haven't heard of any desire to secede from the city, but I must tell you there are a number of residents who have some very significant concerns in the city, and I think that needs to be addressed very seriously. As I walk through all the different neighborhoods and I meet my various residents and constituents, there are a common theme that seems to exist throughout. One, there's this very serious concern about overdevelopment in the city. The proposition of potentially 4 hotels and an expansion within the city raised significant concerns to residents in this community. Also issues that, as a result of that, traffic-related, safety-related, and other issues. And clearly there's a concern among many residents in our community. They don't want to break away from Calabasas, but they want Calabasas to retain that beautiful, unique nature of what it is. We are different. We're not part of the valley. We are a part of a very unique city, the gateway to the Santa Monica Mountains. And many residents, as I go through various communities, are emphasizing the need to keep that purity of Calabasas, keep in consistency with the general plan.
Alicia, rebuttal?
Yeah. 91% of our community voted to incorporate, and I think that's something that's very important to remember. And as individual neighborhoods have concerns, I think the most important thing we could do is increase the public interaction between residents. They need to know that they have a voice at City Hall. And all too often, residents don't feel that connection. I think there's ways that we can improve communication with residents throughout different neighborhoods, utilizing a network of HOAs, utilizing new technology in order to keep residents updated and to make sure that they know that their concerns are heard.
Thank you. Fred?
I have no further rebuttal on secession from the city.
Okay. We're going to move on then, and Fred, this is your question to start with. Still dealing with the power of the city council to deal with seceding or annexing. And this is the city of Calabasas is in the process of annexing the commercial area more commonly known as Craftsman's Corner. Are you in favor of this annexation? Why or why not? And what will or can you do to make this area become more in theme with the current city of Calabasas? Beautification measures, signage, maintenance, zoning, etc. Fred?
My turn?
It's your turn.
Okay. I completely support and voted for initiating the annexation of Craftsman's Corner. I think it makes complete sense that it be part of Calabasas. Hidden Hills agrees; they have no interest in it, and it really is the final frontier in terms of the future, in terms of planning and what we're going to see visually to our city. The reason you annex that is that if we're already providing a lot of the services for that area. The area is a mishmash. As you know, I call it our transportation center because you can get a Maserati or you can get a saddle for your horse. And it's got a mishmash of uses is a nice word to put back there. And I think that over time, we can apply the planning principles that we have in other parts of the city. It can be redeveloped, frankly, over time to aesthetically pleasing uses at the level of landscaping and that we're used to in our city.
Steve?
I am a supporter of the annexation of Craftsman Corner. I think the geographical location of the property, of the area makes sense to annex it within the city. No doubt there'll be a certain amount of sales tax revenue as well as certain property taxes that would be generated for the city. In addition to that, I think making sure we meet with the residents, making sure we address those significant issues within that area is important. But I'm not opposed to the annexation, and I would support that.
Alicia?
I'm also in support of the annexation of Craftsman Corner. The fact that there's support from Hidden Hills, support from the residents in that community, and support from the businesses. The businesses that I've spoken to in that community are especially excited to become a part of Calabasas because of our no business license tax. I think what's also really important is that those businesses will help to offset the trouble that we are having with our budget. When the cost-benefit analysis was done in terms of the public services that would need to be provided versus the economic return, it's in the best interest of the city of Calabasas to annex Craftsman Corner.
Thank you. Any rebuttal, Fred?
Yeah, you know, the other thing that you bring up, the annexation of Craftsman Corner, to me that was a great example of the right way to go about doing something. We had a long-term planning process that led to a general plan that talks about and makes a priority the future annexation of that area, actually pre-designates some samples of the types of uses you would see there. We then went out and had meetings with the residents, with the business owners, workshops and follow-up with them, and only after we had garnered that kind of consensus in our community and in the community we're annexing did the council move forward and vote to annex. So I think it's a good example of a proper process.
Thank you. Steve, you get the last word.
Well, I'll keep it very short this time around, but obviously the process of annexation is very important, making sure you look at it from the value to the city that it brings, in addition to making sure you consult with all the necessary parties. And as with the annexation of my community into Calabasas, which we were very much in favor of as residents, once you've got that support, then you go forward with the legal process of the annexation.
Okay, now we're going to move to a series of questions that deal with, I think, what everybody came here to hear about, which is growth and development in Calabasas. And Steve, you get to go first on this first question. Will you support and uphold the 2030 general plan as written? Are there any elements in the Calabasas general plan that you believe should be changed? If so, what should these changes be?
For better or worse, I've read the general plan a number of times. Very complex, lengthy document. But the value of the general plan was the city was annexed in the city was created in 1991. General plan was entered into with all the interest groups in 1995 with some revisions over time. The general plan is an excellently written document. I believe it's the constitution for the city of Calabasas. There should be adherence to the general plan. It was negotiated by many different interest groups on all different sides, looking at it from different angles, and I think it is very important to adhere to it. It emphasizes the importance of open spaces, the importance of the need to preserve the unique nature of what Calabasas is. Calabasas is different to any other city, and especially the cities in the valley. Calabasas is a beautiful city, and we should adhere to that. I don't believe there's any specific changes that I see to that. There will be variances, no doubt, applied for when construction goes on, but they have to be very carefully scrutinized to make sure consistency applies.
Thank you. Alicia.
The general plan is our guiding document to the city, and it outlines the city's priorities and what we need to adhere for when looking at projects. As a planning commissioner, I take the general plan very seriously. Every 10 years, the general plan is updated. So obviously, as time goes on, things change. But the general plan needs to be adhered to as best as it can. But there's a planning process, and applicants have a right to go through the process. People request variances, conditional use permits, and all of those things need to be considered, though, but in light of the general plan. When reading the general plan, there is one part that I would look to change or possibly enhance, and that is the safety element. I don't think the safety element goes into enough detail in terms of disaster preparedness and what new projects need to do. So I think there's always things that we can do to enhance our community through the general plan, but the general plan is our guiding set of principles.
Fred.
In terms of general principles, I think there's two areas that when we do our next update of the general plan that we will add. One is with regard to senior services and senior living. We did not do as much in that area in our general plan as I think we will do in the next round, given the heightened interest in senior issues and needs of seniors in the city. Also with regard to climate change. There's our general plan was written before some of the awareness that we now have of climate change. So I think there are issues related to air quality and other climate change issues that when we do our next update of the general plan, we would have some changes there. Specifically, well, I'll wait because it's coming in your next question. I was going to talk about some of the development projects, but we'll get to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're coming. Steve, do you have anything additional to say?
On a review of the general plan, specifically as relates to seniors, I think there is a substantial amount of discussion within that general plan that addresses making the city much more walk-friendly, making the city much more accessible to seniors. As we know, the biggest growing demographic in the city is 54 and older. They wish to age in place, as I do in Calabasas. We need to implement what is referenced in the general plan for seniors, because I think it makes clear reference there. We just need to start being proactive to address senior issues.
Alicia?
I think as part of the safety element and disaster preparedness, seniors are a part of that. And in the general plan, it talks about a volunteer program made up of homeowners associations, representatives, medical professionals, and business representatives. And I don't think enough of that is being done, especially with an aging population. Thank you.
Okay, Alicia, your turn to go first. This is another growth question. With the level of growth already planned for the city of Calabasas, do you feel they can support your priorities for funding the services of the city?
I think that as our community continues to demand more amenities and our community continues to grow, we're going to have to make choices and sacrifices. If our community does not support certain projects, there's other things that we're going to have to do as a community to compensate for that. I think as we're talking about all of these big projects, there's other things that we can look at before we even have to entertain them. One of the things that we could look at before looking at new hotels, we have current hotels right now, and possibly raising our transient occupancy tax, which would generate a significant amount more income to the community. So I think it comes down to balance, and we're always talking about balance in our community between business needs and residential needs. So this is a perfect example of balance and how we move forward. But as I'm walking around the community, the number one thing I hear is about the character of our community and people's fear that it's changing. So I'm very cognizant of that and know that as a community we could work through it. There's a process.
Thank you. Fred?
We have a $22 million general fund. If you and we're stuck in, we're relying on sales tax and property tax, which goes at about an inflationary 1 or 2% a year. So any significant new revenue to the city, even if you built one more auto dealership and 2 or even 3 hotels, is another $2 million a year, about 10% more is what we're talking about getting out of those kinds of uses. And I do think that when you lock yourself in revenue-wise to the maximum growth you could have over a 10, 20, 30-year period is 10%, you're going to start having all these programs that people want. Support for our schools, purchasing of open space, senior programs start bumping into each other. So, So that's why I think that as we do look at these development projects, and it's a commercial site, and you're deciding is it going to be an office building, is it going to be retail, is it going to be a hotel, you are going to look at these revenue-generating issues.
Thank you. Steve?
Let's not forget, the city is not bankrupt. This city is a very wealthy city that has money coming in with an average income per resident of $120,000, according to the last statistics. Remember something very important. We have revenue sources coming in. Sales tax revenue, $6.8 million. Transient occupancy tax, 12%. It's $1,564,000 approximately. That being said, what's important to remember is we need to look at expenses for the city. We have revenue coming in. We've got to make sure we balance the budget as we have. But it's very unfair to even contemplate an offset between the education system and what we fund the schools and that we're funding the senior community. The senior community can substantially generate funds which wasn't even attributed for in the budget, which should be allocated. What's important to remember is there may be fees that are generated or will be fees, whether it's membership fees, whether it's programming fees, which when you reflect in the budget for 2016-17, none of those have even been addressed. I think with revenue coming in, okay, we'll stop there.
Alicia?
I think the thing that's most important to remember is that these are just proposals. There's only one project that even has a draft environmental impact report, and the community has a say in these projects, and there's a planning process that people need to go through, and there's no rubber stamp. And we just need to make sure that the community's involved and that the council listens and is a part of the process. I think in terms of revenue, I don't think that the senior center and their membership structure should be something that we're looking to offset our revenue. I see it like the library.
Thank you. Fred, rebuttal?
Yeah, Steve, if you were suggesting that somehow we're going to balance the budget by raising fees for senior programs or charging seniors some significant membership fee to the senior center, I just think it's a mistaken notion. And regardless of any of those relatively small income streams, the city overall, just to continue to pay for public safety, to continue to pay for existing services, there does need to be at least some 5–10% room for growth in revenue, and that's what we have to consider.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and you get to go first on the next one. Fred, where do you stand on the proposed hotel development on Las Virgenes Road and Agura Road? Do you support the general plan vision for the proposed development?
Well, I don't support the general plan vision for that development. The general plan calls for 180 multifamily residential units and 150,000 square feet of commercial space, which it built out there's actually a diagram of 4 buildings, 3 of which are 3-story commercial retail buildings and a multi-story parking structure. So frankly, I don't think that vision is consistent with what the community wants in that area. The proposal that's come before us is, and it's one that we've had input on to get it to a point where it's 70 residential units and a hotel that's about 66,000 square feet, is certainly much closer to what would be considered consistent. And any of these projects, look, I'm on the council, I may be on it again, are going to come to me, so I'm not going to tell you yes or no. People are going to get a fair hearing once an EIR is completed, and we've heard all the testimony, we've gone through the process. But you're going to look to aesthetics, you're going to look to traffic, you're going to look for consistency with the neighborhood.
Steve?
Just to briefly address the senior issue, I'm not saying spend and charge a lot of money for the program. I'm just saying you need to account for a revenue stream coming in on that front. As far as the commercial development on Las Virgenes is concerned, there are significant owners who have a concern. Let's not be naive. If there's a variance that is granted from 3 stories to 4 stories, it'll have a significant impact on the ridge line, inconsistent with the general plan. We have to scrutinize that very, very carefully. We all know that City Council decides on those variances once it's gone through planning if there's an appeal. So really, at the end of the day, the decision, as much as residents get to make that call or raise the issue at City Council, at the end of the day, it's the majority vote on City Council that makes that determination. So your decision on who serves on City Council and who looks at the balanced approach is very, very important. You need voices on all fronts to address what the residents want, the needs of the residents, in addition to looking at land use rights and the general plan as a whole. That is a crucial, underlying, important principle to remember.
Thank you. Alicia?
I think the current proposal in the general plan is probably not the ideal vision for this site. I believe that the current vision is very impactful to the community in terms of traffic and intensity. And on Planning Commission, there was a question posed to the commissioners, and it was, would we consider a recommendation to the City Council to change the height? And we all voted unanimously no, that would not be a recommendation from the Planning Commission. I'm not going to comment on this specific question because if this application comes before, but when I look at a project, I will look at design, traffic impacts, and open space, and the feedback from the neighbors. So I think all of those things will be heard, and we will look to the community as people have already spoken about this project. But I think it's very important to remember that there is a public process, and it's designed to take into all of these issues and to make sure that the best projects are approved in our community.
Fred, rebuttal.
You know, people can ask for what they want. The Hilton Garden Inn was initially a request for a 4-story hotel, and the city of Calabasas knows how to say no and knows how to say what it wants and doesn't want. It ended up with a 3-story hotel at that site, and frankly, since it's been there, There is virtually no complaint that it is out of place, that it causes too much traffic, that it causes other problems in the city. It's turned out to be a significant revenue generator for the city. And so we have examples of how we've handled these issues in appropriate, proper ways in the history of the city. And I'm sure we'll continue to do that with this project and others.
Steve?
Other than not wanting to reiterate what I've previously said, I think you do have to look at all the issues. You do have to look at the traffic issues. Many residents, as I walk in the community, complain at the moment just how bad the traffic issues are, going down Las Virgenes Road, down to the beach and other areas. And we do have to consider the impact that a number of these projects will have. I think there will be discussion, but there is an important need to look at the general plan, look at what the developer wants, because there's indications the developer may not even want a hotel, so we do need to address those.
Alicia?
I think I've made my point that I believe that there's a fair process, and it is something that I will adhere to, and I will continue to look at the design of the project, the traffic impacts, its impact on on open space. But I think that what is currently allowed in the general plan will have a greater impact. So a greater impact than what is currently proposed. But I understand the concerns of the community, and there's a lot of proposals out there, a lot of things that people are hearing, and I think we need to differentiate between fact and fiction.
Okay, I apologize. I gave Alicia an extra couple seconds there because she wasn't due to rebuttal, so I will give Fred another chance if he would like. You want to say anything else, Fred? No. Okay. This question starts with Steve, and we're still on the development issue. Some people have criticized the City Council for being too pro-development. What are your thoughts on this claim?
Well, I think when we look at what goes on, we got to go back to the Constitution of the city. And I reference that because the term Constitution of the city is actually referenced in the general plan. And at the end of the day, let's not be naive on this issue. We know that one of the people on City Council is an attorney, a real land use lawyer who represents developers. We do know that another person running for City Council works for a consultants company who applies for and works on behalf of developers for entitlement process. I'm an attorney who represents HOAs and leaders in the community as homeowners. That's the distinction between me and I believe the other two opponents that I'm running against, or should I rather say I'm running for the city with different opinions. That is very, very important, because unless a decision's made to get this common sense approach and a chance to step back and really evaluate each project very carefully, there is a majority vote on City Council that could quite easily vote every development.
Alicia?
I pride myself in my professional career. I've been involved in public policy for as long as I can remember, working for local cities and helping individuals go through the process. The last few projects I've worked on have been schools and an animal shelter, and it's people that are struggling with the entitlement process that don't understand their rights, and that's the role that I've played, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done. We've never worked on any big projects or any developments. We are truly helping people get through the process, and at times, yes, the city has strayed too far in development. There's examples of proposals with sewer lines in Old Topanga, water park at De Anza Park, but the city also has a record of fighting Amundsen Ranch and doing what's in the best interest of the community. And I know that on City Council, I would represent the community and do everything I can to make sure that we continue with the character of our community and what we all love about Calabasas.
Fred?
Steve, you'd have to do the innuendo of what I do for a living, because you can't come up with a specific example in my 4 years on the council of a vote for a development project that was somehow overdevelopment or inappropriate in any way. In fact, I am a land use lawyer, and I'm a damn good one, which is why the Mountains Restoration Trust, when they get sued, they ask me to defend them, to defend open space in the city. And I did it previously, and I'm doing it now. That's why when James Bazagian and I sit down to write Proposition O and go through the language of what are we going to do to strengthen our open space protections in the city, and I make the motion to put that on the council. And that's why when some of these projects that have come, most of which have been single-family homes, small projects, I've been the one to make the motion to say, okay, you're going to build this house. Well, the rest of it, we're going to have a covenant for open space. We're going to ensure that we're protecting natural resources on those sites. And it's because of that experience that I'm able to do that on the council.
Okay, Steve, rebuttal.
I think going back and looking at the voting record is an important thing to do. But what is public record as well is that there's no doubt, Fred, that you did take many realtors around the city to show them all the various projects, making recommendations of various projects, including hotels to build within that area. Not saying your vote is anything more than 1 vote out of 5 votes, but there is a significant impact and there is a need for a voice on City Council to step back, a common sense, balanced approach, saying, let's look at what's in the best interest of the community.
Thank you. Alicia?
While I was getting my master's in public policy, where I focused on local and regional and economic policy, I actually interned for the city of Calabasas. That was back when City Hall was located on Muro Road. I was very impressed back then with the policies of the city, and that helped guide my career working for local governments and in public policy. I was very impressed and have continued to work on in other municipalities environmental issues, dark sky ordinance, and other things that we modeled after the city of Calabasas. Thank you.
Okay, Alicia, this is the last question now on development, and then we'll move on to other things. But the western end of the city has 3 community parks with amenities such as age-appropriate play equipment, tennis courts, roller hockey ring, basketball courts, covered picnic benches, ball fields, bathrooms, and parking. However, the eastern end has none. Do you have any ideas to address this disparity?
Well, first of all, I think the east and west divide of Calabasas is not a real divide. We're one community. I live in the Molewood area, and within our own little neighborhood, there is a pocket park that is frequently used by residents. But I understand the need to have more parks throughout the whole community. I know that Wild Walnut Park is an example that we're looking at, the city is looking at. The community is also looking at ways to enhance access to Creekside Park. But I think the fact that, yes, I have 2 young children, and we will go to wherever the best park is. Doesn't matter if it's not right next door. We will go to wherever the best park is. And I think that helps build a sense of community. But I know that as Calabasas, increasing the amount of park space is one of our priorities. So it would definitely be something that I would want to look at with Wild Walnut Park and Creekside. But I also think that Freedom Park, which is located in my own neighborhood, is a wonderful pocket park. And if more people knew about it, they would enjoy it as well.
Fred.
My 3 girls grew up in Molewood with no real park, and so we would love to find places to do things on the east side of town. What the city has done, and one of the things we were poor in when we did incorporate, was parks. These developments came in without a lot of parks. We were able to do it where we could do it. A lot of them ended up on the west side because that's where there was property available, and we didn't sit. It wasn't me, but our forefathers and mothers on the council didn't say east side, west side. They said, hey, here's an opportunity for a park with certain kinds of uses, and that's what the city council continues to do. Most recently, we have looked at adding some playground equipment to Wild Walnut Park. Again, we've done it in a way where we've had workshops and public hearings. I agree with that. Again, it's not going to be a major change, but to allow some more active use of that park, and we need to continue to look for opportunities. We've done it with shared use of AC Stel and other facilities to try and make up for the lack of parks on the east side.
Thank you. Steve?
I grew up, my children grew up, Gabby, Danielle, and Adam are all here this evening, grew up playing in the beautiful parks in Calabasas. That is very important to preserve that. Preserve our open spaces. In addition to the beautiful parks, we must allow access to the beautiful Amundsen Ranch and all other areas. We should nurture our parks, make sure we make there's sufficient revenue to be able to maintain them as we do. And I agree completely. the west side and the east side are one Calabasas. We're united in that front, and accessibility all should be important. We can look at the parks, whether it's Freedom Park, and publicize it more to be able to get accessibility to that, make sure parks are maintained, but most important, set aside revenue to make sure we take care of our parks. And if there is any way of making the open space area into further development of parks, we should explore that and have a look at that, and really determine where we can grow the natural open space of the city and keep it that way, because that's the importance of Calabasas, the unique.
Thank you. Alicia, any rebuttal?
No, just that I guess there is a rebuttal. That I think looking to expand park space throughout the community is something that is a priority for the community, whether it's on the east side or the west side. But having a young family, people will go anywhere for the best park. So I just want to make sure that's.
Fred?
I think we've done an incredible job with what we've been able to do here in Calabasas. Everything from the tennis and swim center, acquiring that, to the several parks that have been built on the west side, to the joint use with the Agoura Hills Calabasas Community Center. We've put together a recreation program that is a pride of this city and participated in by virtually every family. And so I think we're doing well with what we have, and doing it within budget.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to some other topics beside development. And Fred, you get to go first on this one. Could you please describe your past and present involvement and support for our local Calabasas schools?
Well, I've look. This is the Calabasas dream: is that people move here primarily for the schools. Have their kids come live in a community where their friends go to the neighborhood school, and they grow up in that community and grow up together. So many of the families, I see so many of my friends here today that's the truth for. And we need to continue to have that and to hand that off to future generations in Calabasas. I've been involved in coaching youth soccer. I've been involved in numerous PFC activities. We were a founding family of AC Stell. We're donors to the new PAC at the high school. Many of you know that my wife has been on the school board for 8 years, and her work has been incredible. So our family has been completely dedicated to our public schools. On the council, I have fought hard during our recessionary times while we were having cutbacks to see that there were no cuts in the $1 million a year that we do to support the schools with public safety, with transportation, with our allocations to the PFCs.
Thank you. Steve?
My 3 kids, they're sure getting reference today. This evening, they all are going through the Las Virgenes Unified School District system. My daughter Danielle, at the age of 6, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I can tell you Lupin School was an extension of our family in taking care of the process from day one in dealing with when she was 6 years old. She's thriving and dealing with it perfectly, but the Las Virgenes Unified School District is the reason people move to Calabasas in addition to other reasons. It is a unique school district. We are neighborhood schools. We need to make sure that Measure E is funded to be able to allocate that revenue source for parcel taxes of $98, of which, as you know, the seniors can opt out if they so choose, which means they don't have to pay that parcel tax. But it's very important to support the school. I'm a big believer in supporting the school district, and I'm a big supporter of making sure the city council does continue to allocate funds for the PFC, crossing guards, sheriff patrols, etc., a very integral part of our city.
Alicia?
My husband Adam and I moved to Calabasas specifically for the school system, and I got involved with the schools even before our children started. I started when I joined the board of the foundation, where we've helped to raise over almost $1 million to supplement the budget cuts to the district, and we've gone out and raised money with residents and businesses. I'm also on the board for the Bay Laurel PFA, where we work directly with the city on issues related to crossing guards and public safety. I'm also chair of the Las Virgenes Unified School District Measure G Bond Oversight Committee, where we specifically look to make sure that bond expenditures that were approved by voters are properly spent. I'm not just a supporter of the schools, I get involved with them. And through that involvement, I've gotten to understand how the city's relationship works with the schools. The schools do so much, the city does so much more to our schools than just gives money. The city council participates in school events.
Thank you. Fred?
So because I was rough on you before, I agree with Steve completely. We need to support Measure E on this ballot. In fact, I'll tell you quite forthright, it's way more important that Measure E pass in this election than any two of the three of us get elected in terms of the future of this community and the kids in our community. So it's very important that that we support Measure E. I was in the phone bank calling the other day, and it's not my first rodeo. This is, Jill and I were there for the bond measure that built the PACs.
Thank you.
And we've been there in the past parcel tax measures as well.
I don't think I need to reiterate any of the other points already said, other than what increases property values in the city is the reason the school systems are so good that increases property values. And I think it's a very important aspect of what makes Calabasas and the Las Virgenes Unified School District such an important integral part of our city. And of course, safety and other concerns are very important. And one of the issues that have been raised are the concerns with construction going on by the city while they're undertaking it at the schools.
Thank you. You get to start with the next question, which goes to another area completely.
Do I get to comment?
No, you
can give it 3 chances.
No, okay.
Yeah. You get for the next one. You already had your say on this one. Public safety, Steve, is a major concern to the residents of Calabasas, and there has been an increase in crime this past year. What is your plan to improve public safety?
I must tell you, this issue is such a fundamentally important issue. I have been walking the precinct after precinct after precinct in the city. I am quite astounded by the number of seniors in Malwood who are too scared to come out of their homes. I had one lady speak to me through the window telling me that her home was robbed, that she's too scared to go out, that she's frightened, and that she doesn't believe there is enough security to protect her. The safety in our city is paramount. We pay a significant amount of money to the sheriff, north of $4 million a year, and we need to make sure we work closely with the sheriff department to ensure our safety of our residents. We must educate residents about the importance of the ability to contact the sheriff. If they go on vacation, they need to address that. So safety is in 2 fronts. One, obviously, the safety and security from a theft and crime point of view. As you know, crime is up 15% this year. We need to investigate and look at why. And also, obviously, the other issue, which we'll get to on my rebuttal.
Alicia?
Public safety is something very important to all of us. When I'm actually the neighborhood watch coordinator for our community, so we organize the neighborhood watch efforts in our neighborhood. When I met with the sheriff, they said to me that so much of the rise of crime in Calabasas could be prevented, and we need to educate our residents. People are taking for granted their safety, and I see this when I'm walking around. Garage doors left open, front doors left open, and it's something we need to do to educate our community. Another thing that the sheriff's office said is that this rise in crime is not just in the non-gated communities. It's happening in the gated communities too, and that the sheriff's department needs to work more closely with the HOA departments. And another thing that has been very concerning to me is I'm walking around the community, and you have these voter lists, so you see people's ages. Residents in their 80s and 90s have these deadbolts on the outside of their doors. So they're so concerned for their public safety, but it's not a safe issue for them either.
Thank you. Fred?
Well, I don't think, I don't get the same sense that you guys get. We're one of the safest cities in California. It's in every survey. Our sheriffs do a good job. We have had uptick in certain crimes. We're actually down this year on home burglaries. There's been an uptick in petty thefts, people snatching cell phones left on a table, and those issues. This is your 14%. But what we had is 2 years ago is we had an uptick in break-ins. And what we did do is we increased patrols. I have people telling me all over the city they've seen sheriff cars coming down their street that they didn't see in prior years. We went back and beefed up our neighborhood watch, and I was there at the meetings in Malwood and on the west side as these neighborhood watches came back. And we've, I think, done a good job with our sheriffs. But it takes a lot of work. I've been in the cars with the sheriffs. I've been down there working on these issues because providing public safety to our residents is the #1 priority.
Steve?
I think one aspect of safety that people haven't addressed tonight, which I think is important, is disaster preparedness for purposes of safety. I think we need to make sure that we know all the seniors, making sure that neighborhood watches and other programs reach out to seniors within the community to be able to deal with those safety issues, whether it's safety for their health and life and safety issues, as well as security or other related thefts. But I think those aspects must be dealt with in addition to the concerns that have been expressed by residents.
Thank you. Alicia?
There's a program run through the county that the city of Calabasas participates in called the SNAP program, and it's where individuals can register if they have an elderly parent, an elderly neighbor, somebody that is physically disabled, and that will allow our first responders to know that they need to go to these people's houses first to help them. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job of publicizing to make sure that people in our community, in the event of a disaster, get the help that they need.
Okay, Alicia, you're the first one on this one. Right now in California, in Calabasas and everywhere else, we are in the midst of an awful drought. How can you justify more development if there isn't enough water to support those who already live here? And what can you do as a member of City Council to deal with the drought?
Well, I think just like with any big issue, there's always more that can be done. We all continue to see our neighbors watering 5 days a week and watering on their off days, and the city needs to be more vigilant, and we as residents also need to be more vigilant at calling the water department. I think the city needs to set an example, even though we used recycled water with the plants that we're putting in, and when the community is designing new projects, taking into account landscaping. With the new developments, these developments have been planned and accounted for with the water district. So it's to my understanding that there is enough water to supply the proposed projects that are in discussion.
Fred?
That's correct in terms of planning. You'll notice that the governor and the legislature in dealing with the water crisis did not call for a moratorium on new development. That has all kinds of other externalities throughout the state and the economy. The new projects are way more water efficient than old projects, the replacement of new with old in terms of, and again, 70% of the water use is outside. So you go to drip irrigation and drought tolerant landscaping, and you're able to achieve literally 50% water savings, which is exactly what our requirements are in the city for any new development, is to have those types of water-saving features outside as well as all of the latest water-saving features inside. And this is in addition to the fact that the 5 or 6 parcels that are undeveloped in the city that may end up being developed are already accounted for in the long-term planning by the Water District and in our own general plan and other plans.
Steve?
Well, I think, as we know, we're in the most severe drought we've had in many, many years, and the use of drought-tolerant plants should be a priority in the city. I see there's many areas where there's sod and other grassy areas in the city. I think we need to address that, because even with reclaimed water that we use, it's still down to 3 times a week for watering, and we need to preserve that issue. As far as the water usage for the project, I'm not certain how those calculations have been done, since the general plan is going to be changed for purposes of developing hotels, which weren't originally called for within the general plan. So the evaluation of the water and the use of the water is important to look at and be scrutinized just the way the rest of the projects need to be scrutinized to address that. I know the Water District has accounted for it based on the current general plan, but it's important to look at that issue just the way we look at all the other issues of safety, traffic, and other related issues. But we have to be very cost conscious, and even with a good El Nino as anticipated, that's not going to relieve our drought entirely. It's going to take many, many years.
Alicia?
I think there's a lot of new technologies in place that are helping communities deal with the drought, and I think our city needs to continue to look at them. The city of Santa Clarita and Beverly Hills have recently embraced some new technologies. Another thing that our city can do is work with residents who want to explore utilizing gray water. I've spoken to many residents who would be interested in that, and I think that's something that the city can take a lead on. So there's a lot of innovative things that communities can do. You look at a country like Israel in the desert and how they've responded to the drought, and we can follow that lead.
Fred?
My record on this is clear. We have installed computerized irrigation that's reduced our watering by up to 30%. The city, in every one of our public works projects, installs additional purple pipes so that we're now 90% of the city parks, medians, golf course are done off of recycled water. The drought-tolerant planting that's gone in throughout the city. These are the things that the City Council has jurisdiction over and has done with my full support over the last 4 years.
Thank you. Okay, you get to start on this one. Can you comment on your views on signs in Calabasas, both traffic and commercial signs identifying retail establishments?
This is me?
That's you.
Yeah. We just did a small amendment to our sign ordinance, and I think it was a justified amendment, and it had to do with are we going to allow businesses that back to the freeway to have some signage showing from the freeway? And the businesses came to us, said, you know, we can't think about the back of the courtyard. It doesn't tell you that Susie Cakes and Riviera and Subway are there. This is next to the freeway, for God's sake. It's not a sign up in some open space area. So what we came up with through a process took a year, and we had 3 planning commission hearings and 2 council hearings, and we went through and we had a workshop, and we came up with a small change that's going to allow each shopping center, there's 3 of them that back to the freeway, to have a sign, a nicely done sign that allows people to see what the tenants are. That kind of reasonable response to a request from our local businesses was completely justified, and I support it.
Steve?
The signage issue is a very important one because I know there's these different groups between the business owners as well as the sign ordinance that we have in the city. The big issue that came to the fore when I attended City Council meeting was addressing the concerns that the Summit has, a particular project to do with signage. As far as the signage is concerned, I think concerns related to signage are not the exclusive reason why businesses don't succeed. In fact, the signage ordinance in our city is strictly imposed, yet businesses seem to thrive very well in our city. I'm not saying we shouldn't allow for signage. It is addressed in the city. The monument issues are addressed. But really, we've got to weigh the beauty of the city, the unique nature of the city, looking at business at the same time, but at the same time making sure we don't have signage, for example, like the city of LA has, where the cities override and change the character and the nature of what Calabasas is. I think you have to address it on a case-by-case basis, but it is important to remember the unique nature of Calabasas.
Alicia.
I was really proud of this process. When the Chamber of Commerce came to Planning Commission, there was a problem, and they were looking for a way to solve it. And we went through hearing after hearing. But the Calabasas businesses, who provide a significant amount of revenue to residents, they felt that their signage needs were not met. From some centers, they hardly had any signage, to other centers that felt the placement of the signs were not right. So we worked with them. It was hearing after hearing, and it was open to the public. And there was support for this project. And we worked to make sure that the signage did not impact anything to do with open space, that there were not bright lights to the signage. We made sure that this signage was nothing like the city of Los Angeles. We wanted to make sure that the signage that is approved for businesses represents and keeps in with the character of Calabasas.
Fred?
I've been on the City Council 4 years. I have not had one complaint about signage at Calabasas, except the Chamber came in and asked for this change here. I mean, if you think about it, we're very restrictive on the signs. The Commons, you look at the Commons, I don't think, no one goes to the Commons and says, oh my God, the signs are overwhelming. In the Commons, they get to have a sign on the front inside the center, and they also have a sign on the back. If you're on Park Sereno, there's a sign that says Williams-Sonoma, says Starbucks. We don't allow that on other buildings in the city. You know, you have to look at each of these cases reasonably and
Steve?
apply
I think it's important to make sure you do look at each case by case and create a consistency in the signage of the various buildings. Obviously, there are certain signs, as we know, that have been grandfathered in that definitely don't work within the nature and the beauty of the city of Calabasas, but those exist and will continue to exist until businesses change or they no longer have the right to use that signage, and I'm not going to go into an explanation on that. But most important, making sure consistent enforcement and uniformity of the sign ordinance is important.
Okay, the next question. At city council meetings, the public is encouraged to speak up on the issues before the council. Do you feel that only citizens should be permitted to speak, citizens of Calabasas, that is? How do you plan on balancing the wishes of the vocal minority who speak at the meetings and the wishes of the silent majority when making your decisions on issues before the council?
Who does that go to?
Oh,
it's my question.
Your question.
Well, I must tell you, the exercise of democracy is the greatest gift given to this country, and I've lived in a country that never had it. And I must tell you, the opportunity for people to be heard. I always laugh as my boss president. I say, people never come and say, Steve, you're the greatest thing ever. You're a brilliant board president, and you have my support. They always come to raise concerns and issues. And that's the important value of the democratic process, to be heard. Everyone should have the right to be heard within the format of public comment. It is a crucial, integral part of democracy. I think City Council has got to emphasize the need for more discussion on the record. As they say in my legal profession, justice must be done, seen to be done, transparency must be done, but seen to be done as well. I, as a City Council member, will be emphatic about discussions and complex issues and questioning of city government on their findings on the record, not behind-the-scenes discussions and voting on the record, but lengthy, detailed explanations on the record for all the citizens of Calabasas to be able to hear how we get to decisions that we get to.
Alicia?
I believe that all individuals who have a stake in Calabasas have the right to speak at council meetings. Our community is made up of more than just residents. We have a lot of other stakeholders in our community. I think engaging more people in the public process is very important. And I think the fact that all of our council and commission meetings are held at 7 o'clock at night on a weeknight, it makes it very hard for certain demographics of our community to attend these meetings. So I think there's ways that we need to reach out to more people and engage them in the public process. And I think if we're able to successfully do that, we will have a more balanced approach at our council meetings. But I agree, the dialogue at commission meetings and council meetings needs to be more engaging.
Fred?
I am most proud in my 4 years, more proud than any particular project or building, public work, of how this council has treated the people that have come before the city council. The darkest moments in our city's history have been when the council has not treated the residents who come before it in an appropriate manner. And we were in one of those periods when I was elected 4 years ago. We were in a period where people were coming before the council and they were not being given their due. Residents or non-residents. I don't think it makes any difference whoever shows up at the hearing. And we have made, we've give everyone their time. I'm proud that all of us that are on the council now sit and listen and make sure that we acknowledge that we listen in the comments we make and refer to what people have said before us. I've even, you call it schmaltzy, but I've even added that I try to go out, and now all the councilors try to go out before the meeting starts just to say hello to everybody and shake hands and welcome them to the chamber, because that's the kind of government we want to have here in Calabasas.
Thank you. Steve?
What's important is discussion on the record. It's one thing listening to public comment. It's another thing those people sitting at home that cannot make it, whether they have kids at home or they're seniors and cannot get out and go to city council. That communication on the record, the discussions, the analysis, the process, the investigation into the findings, the questioning in detail is what's crucial to this democratic process to work properly. And I, as a city council member, will make sure that happens.
Alicia?
What a lot of other communities have successfully done to further engage public interaction, they've developed like walking tours of the community. So before a big item comes to the city council, there have been walking tours. So then by the time people get to city council, they're more engaged on the project and they're able to be more involved in the discussion. And I think that's something that would be very important in our community. Thank you.
Okay, what I've heard tonight is that the three of you agree on a lot of things, although you have some disagreements, but there's a lot of consensus. So what I'd like to ask you is sort of the last question, is why should these people, these folks in Calabasas, vote for you as opposed to the other two? So, Alicia?
Is this our closing statement, or it's
No, this is the last question.
I think what separates me from my opponents are has to do with experience and hands-on experience. Not only am I a volunteer and a commissioner, but I've been on the other side as a city staff person working in communities throughout Southern California. And I think it's very important to look outside the box of your own community and draw comparisons and be able to see what works in other communities, what doesn't, and draw from those examples. I think my involvement in the schools, understanding a different demographic, I think is very important. I think my commitment and listening to all different people. When people have come before Planning Commission on all very controversial positions, I've always shown people respect, and I've always made that extra effort to try to work with people and try to build consensus. And I think those are very important skills that would benefit our city council. Thank you.
Fred?
You know, if you like the city and you think that we've done good things and you're feeling safe and you think that it's a beautiful place and you like the kind of programs that we're doing and that you like that we're in a good fiscal position, then I think I deserve your vote, because that's what I've worked on for 4 years, and that's where I think we are. If you think you got to go in another direction and the city's in the wrong track, I'm not your guy. Okay, I'm not your guy if that's where you think if that's your view. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do in this city, and it's important to listen to people, and it's important to be thoughtful and knowledgeable, and I think I've shown that I can do that. But you know what else you have to do? You have to deliver. And one of the things that we're doing now in the city is we're delivering. People, it's one thing to talk about a senior center, it's another thing to have the construction going on there. And that's what we've been able to do, and what I want to continue to do on the city council for the next 4 years.
Steve?
I think what clearly differentiates me from the other two candidates, and I don't want to belabor a point, is that I clearly come from a very common sense approach, a very balanced approach of bringing the general plan to the forefront of what the city is all about. My goal as serving on city council is to make sure discussions take place. I have the knowledge, the experience, whether it's as leader in my community way back when I was in college leadership roles, to my involvement as the chair of historic preservation, to HOA leader, to a lawyer for representation of HOAs, to my involvement on non-profit organizations on the board of the JDRF and other organizations. I bring a unique perspective. I'm an attorney. I always kid myself and say I'm more like Curious George, in the sense that I want to ask the questions. I don't make decisions until I explore them in great depth, and that's what differentiates me in many respects, because the devil's in the details. It's the details, the minutiae that count, and that's where a good city council member is there.
Alicia? 30 seconds.
I think having the experience of being on the Environmental Commission and the Planning Commission provides a wonderful contrast, and the experience needed to be on the City Council. In both of those experiences, I prided myself on finding balanced solutions that work in the best interest of the residents.
Fred?
This is a rebuttal on why you should be elected.
Pardon?
Hey, I didn't get to start. He did.
I have no rebuttal on these fine people's reasons.
Now, Fred, you go first now. You're going to go first in the closing statements. And the candidates each have 2 minutes to summarize all that they have said this evening.
It's been actually a heavy couple of days. If for those of us who, well, for everyone, but I think for those, especially of us who sat in Temple and thought about what we did wrong and what we might do better, and then to be followed up by the Pope and watching someone who is, it's just so magnificent to see someone stand before Congress and recite the Golden Rule and talk about how about the importance of ethical behavior and respect and empathy for your fellow person. And while those sound like lofty, ridiculous things when you're talking about who should be on the Calabasas City Council, for those of you, I think, who have watched me, and this is, I think about these things. How do we treat people appropriately? How do we listen to them? How, even when I have a pretty good idea what I might want to do, I take what people are saying and find even a better way or a compromise or another solution. And this is what I think about when I'm sitting up there, other than running through my checklist of public safety, of aesthetic beauty, protection of open space, environmental leadership. Are we providing programs that people want? Can we do that? And are we fiscally responsible? I run through that checklist. And my other checklist, and I've said this before, is be nice and tell the truth, because that's when we've gotten in trouble in our city, is when people have not done those very simple things. And if you think that I've followed those rules to the best of my ability and done that, then I urge you to vote for me and reelect me to the City Council. And I appreciate everyone for coming tonight. I thank you so much for participating, and I hope you'll get out and vote on November 3rd.
And then we'll give you time to express your approval. Steve?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight, and with us the opportunity to debate the issues with Fred and Alicia. I think this forum is the basis of our democracy and such an important integral part. And I'll be remiss in not acknowledging my mom, Carmel, who's all the way here from South Africa to spend 2 months with us. If somebody could please convince her to remain until November 3rd for the election. I think she's the greatest asset I've got, other than, of course, my 3 kids. What's important is to remember my priorities of why I'm running for Calabasas City Council: to protect the Santa Monica Mountains, the trails, the parks, the ridge lines. I was honored by Mayor Pro Tem James Bozigian asked me to be an official signatory on Measure O. I will make sure I scrutinize proposed hotels and other developments to ensure compliance with the general plan. The general plan is our constitution. We need to look at that document very, very carefully in decision making. We need to support our schools, as I've said, supporting Measure E, which is crucial, and make sure the city continues to fund our education system and the Calabasas schools. Last but not least, I want to ensure that the city becomes senior friendly. There are so many different aspects of that, and having the experience and knowledge of representing senior communities for many years, I believe I will add significant value to taking steps forward within the city. The senior community is the first step. There are a number of other significant issues that we need to address. Based on what I hear here tonight, I think my opponents' views are very different to my views. I believe that their ways are at odds with many of the residents of Calabasas. We need to fight, and I will fight, to maintain our proud place as the gateway to the Santa Monica Mountains. I will continue to walk the precincts expressing my messages of common sense leadership and solutions and balanced decision making. I will please ask that you vote for me on November 3rd. I hope I have your support, and I look forward to the opportunity to serve on City Council.
Alicia?
I believe in the city of Calabasas, and I believe on working on the issues that are important to us residents. With a background in public policy and municipal government and years on as a city commissioner, I believe I have the skills and the strength to work on these issues that are important to us and to use solutions to find consensus and to improve on things that might not be working in our community. Just like any wonderful place, we can always make things better. And that's the sign of a good city council. When you're looking on ways to improve things, we want to maintain the character of our community, and looking at the land use issues that will be before us is something very important and something that I feel that I have the experience to do. Nobody wants the city of Calabasas to turn into looking like the city of Los Angeles. I want to work to enhance public safety, and I believe we can do that by increasing our network of neighborhood watches throughout not just non-gated communities, but through gated communities. I want to support the seniors and our schools, and I think there's many ways that we can continue to do that. Building the senior center is just the start, and there's so much more that we can do. Something that's so unique to Calabasas is that we are a multi-generational community. I'm raising my children here with my husband, Adam, and my parents are here too. And I think that's not uncommon in Calabasas, and that's something that we need to support and grow on. And I believe that together, and if elected to the city council, we can develop new planning technologies that can help look at ways to help Calabasas respond to the drought. We need to look to support our general plan and as we talked about the schools, there's so much more that we can do. So I would love to have your support on November 3rd, and even before that if you vote absentee. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for those that came tonight. I think it's very important, and this is just the start of being engaged in this process. Thank you.
I'd like to thank each of the candidates, and now's the time to show your appreciation.